Thank you. All right. I'd like to go ahead and call to order our Finance Committee meeting of Tuesday, March 26, 2024. It is 1:02 p.m. and we're live on a digital platform. Today we have we have a somewhat confusing number of items on our agenda, but we have at least 5 items on the agenda. But depending on which agenda everyone's looking at, the resolution regarding the right-of-way agreement between the City of Williamsport and PPNL is no longer on the council agenda for this Thursday. So we won't be dealing with that one. Anyway, present here, I have myself and Eric Biter from the Finance Committee. So I'm Liz Neely, and then Eric Biter from the Finance Committee. Councilwoman Bonnie Katz is also present. From our legal team, I have Chris Kenyon and Jill Nagy from RVT. RVT's legal team, as well as Todd Wright from RVT, are here as well. Bill Scott, the city engineer, Derek Slaughter, the mayor, Valerie Fessler from grants, and Chris Black, obviously at City IT, are all present. The first item on our agenda, unless anyone has a request to move things around at all, is item number 1, a resolution authorizing a submission of a grant application to the Department of Conservation and Natural Resources for Young's Woods Park Improvement Project. Ms. Fessler?
Good afternoon, Liz. Thank you. In front of you have a resolution, like you said, to submit a grant to DCNR. This will be a revitalization of Young Woods Park. We will be removing pavilion, replacing it with a new pavilion, adding picnic tables, new trash cans, playground equipment that will be all inclusive, parking lot paving according to ADA requirements, removal of the old fence, replacing it with a new fence, a walking trail, senior exercise amenities, bike racks, removing existing and installing new sidewalks, new benches, a rain garden, and a pickleball court. So we're really looking forward to this project. This grant application does require a match, and we've had some meetings with a local foundation and feel pretty good about the relationship we're building with them for a potential match source. Outside of that, we're also talking with Delta, our consultant, to potentially apply for a GTRP, Greenway Trail and Recreation Program grant. So we have several different opportunities to help with that match. Any questions?
Sure. Thanks, Valerie. Eric, do you have any questions?
What's the amount of the grant that we're going for, and what would be the required match?
Thank you for asking that, Eric.
We're still in the process of getting the site plan from Chris Kaiser from Bricks Design, and Bill Scott's also on the meeting. He's been the one working diligently to get that part of the project moving. We're hoping it'll be approximately a $600,000 project that will allow us to qualify for the Land, Water, and Conservation Fund. So it would be a 50% match.
So it'd be 300,000 grant, 300,000 match.
Correct.
And so this is not, we used to apply for, we've applied for several parks grants through DCNR that had a $250,000 cap, but the Land, Water, and Conservation grants don't have that cap.
So those projects, from my understanding of the meeting that we had with Wes Faringer from DCNR, is a minimum of a $600,000 project with a 50% match for this specific funding source. So we had to come in $600,000 for a total project cost, which will allow us to do a lot at that park.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, I think that probably just new parks equipment, especially we're contemplating making the playground surface accessible. Is that true?
Yeah, our goal would be for the park to be all inclusive. Some of the feedback we've been getting from individuals in the community is when things are ADA compliant, individuals with disabilities can get to the playground, but then once they're there, they can't do anything. So we're hoping that the equipment itself will allow for inclusivity. And we've been talking with actually Lester Lohner from the Lycoming County Special Olympics. And we also consulted with Carl Bauer from Penn College regarding the like the green space portion of the grant, just to get some community input on what makes the most sense for sustainability.
Got it. Yeah, I guess what I'm saying is if we need a handicapped accessible playground surface, I think that alone runs about $200,000.
Absolutely.
And then the new equipment would probably be about $3. So we're putting ourselves well over the $600,000 mark. But understanding that, so we have not secured a match necessarily for this grant, right? Or where are we at in the grant application process? When are we expecting to submit the application?
So the application is due on April 3rd. And so we're in the process of getting it all put together rather quickly. We're hoping to have the site plan by the end of the week, and then the other pieces of the application are complete. We just have to write the budget narrative according to the site plan. Bill, did you have anything to add?
No, I mean, you really covered it all, the scope, all the items, and yeah, we're, like you said, we've met with Chris Kaiser out there, offered some local knowledge and help for a site plan and a cost estimate. That's certainly part of the application. So yeah.
Got it.
And I'll just add in also, although we may not have secured definitely the match, if we are pretty confident, I don't want to, we can't obviously say publicly yet because it's not 100%, but we had some really good meetings with folks that believe we'll be able to secure that match and not have to use, like Act 13 or city dollars.
Got it. All right. Eric, I sort of took over your line of questioning there. Did you want to return to anything there?
No. The only other question that I would ask, which is separate from anything there, is if we are not able to secure either the match or the grant, specifically the grant itself, do we have plans to continue with this project?
Well, it would be difficult, obviously, unless we look at funding somewhere else or narrowing the scope. So I doubt we'd be able to do the $600,000, but maybe we could do maybe just the playground equipment or something like that. So if we're unable or we're not successful in securing this grant, it would probably just be a smaller project. So we would still like to do something in Young's Woods, obviously, but it might not be to the scale of this current scope.
And so we believe that the matching entity might be willing to grant the match even in the absence of a DCNR grant that would need to be matched?
Yes, possibly. Yeah, we had a really good meeting, and so yes, we believe so. And DCNR, we had a great meeting with them, and actually DCNR was the one that recommended this other grant source, and so that's why, to your point earlier, Councilwoman, we decided to go for a larger project. Obviously, Wes is very familiar with the city, and he's the one that recommended. This doesn't obviously mean anything, but hopefully,
yeah. I mean, they have several different granting avenues, and I think the parks equipment one is the only one we've ever utilized, but I'd love to see us try and get some of their parks acquisition or acquisition grants for properties in the city to kind of help us deal with maybe Graphius or something like that. So anyway, there's a lot of possibilities through DCNR. What was I going to say? I thought that we had been looking. Did we simply not get the grant that we had originally discussed with CDBG funds as a match? Hadn't we been looking at Young's Woods and something with community development, or did we do that work out there?
I'd have to go back and check. I don't remember. That may have been last year's what we applied for. I don't think we were successful in that one.
We were successful. Okay. We have not done any work at Young's Woods recently.
No. Well, other than the only one we did was the ARPA money where we did the research into the basketball courts and then the Air Force for the hoops. That was it at Young's.
Yeah.
We were successful though with the DCNR for the pump track, obviously out in Shaw Park last year. So we did get that one. But I don't remember off the top if we applied for anything at Young's or not. but I can double.
I remember looking at a scope of work for something out in Youngs Woods that didn't involve replacing the parks equipment. But I think it was last year, but I'm not quite sure. But yeah, I hadn't noticed that the work had been done at all. So, but hadn't heard that we got denied. So, okay. All right. Then the one other question that I would ask is, can you, so obviously this is just a resolution that references attached documents, but there are no documents attached. And as it turns out, that's because there are no documents yet. So when you have the remaining elements of the grant application, can you please forward those to council so that we have the entirety of the plan there?
Absolutely.
Okay. Great. Eric, anything else from you?
I've got nothing.
Okay, Bonnie, anything from you?
Yes, I do have a question. This is coming from a completely different angle. There are people who donate things to the parks in memory of, or in the family's name. Some of the things that have been done have been like park benches, things like that. If you go and redo and you're going to revamp the parks and everything, what do you do with, say, that the benches that are put in the family's name?
Right.
Is that restored, or how is that done?
Yeah, so usually if there are, I don't know if there are any Youngs Woods or not, before we start, we will check. And then if they could be maintained and restored, we'll keep them, and keep those there. If the family would like to, if they're not in good shape and the family would like us to do a new bench, we've done that before as well. So we will check Youngs Woods to see what the status is, if there's any donated items there or in memory of items, benches, or anything like that. If there are, we we want to keep those in place.
Terrific. You hear that through the years of people saying that they've donated, their names on trees, things like that. And I didn't know how that was handled. And this is the only thing, that crossed my mind. Thank you very much for answering the question.
Awesome. Okay. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
And Valerie, I don't know that we've officially met. Nice to see you on here.
Thank you. You too.
Okay. All right. Then up next on today's agenda, we have a resolution by municipality certified provision of local match for state operating financial assistance. Todd, are you on? I'm assuming you're on here for a couple of things. Are you on here for this one?
Yeah, I'll be handling the local match.
Okay.
Okay, good afternoon.
Hi.
This is the annual resolution certifying the provisional local match that provides for the city of Williamsport's contribution towards now RVTA's annual section 1513 operating allocation local match requirement. Our amount this year is 5.8 million in 1513 operating grants from the state, which was 6% over our 22-23 allocation. As required, there is a local match amount not to exceed a full 15% match. We're not at that. So our increase over last year was 5% per the guidelines. The local match, then we take and we do a percentage calculation based on our scheduled revenue miles of our core service to determine the allocations. The city's allocation that we were requesting for 24 was $297,417.02, which was the basic 5% increase over last year. We also looked from Lycoming County and 9 other additional municipalities that also contribute to this annual local match. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have on it. This is something standard we do every year.
Got it. Thanks, Todd. Eric, any questions?
If I recall, about 2 years ago, year and a half ago, this was something that other municipalities were having a hard time realizing that they had to pay this local match. Is there any issue with that still? Have they all come to the table? Is the city the only one? If you can expand upon that a bit.
No, there was some question. There was some discrepancies or some items noted by PennDOT in the past as to what the city was including in their local match to offset, what municipalities were making in contributions. Everyone has been coming to the table. Usually all they really want to know at this point is, why are we seeing an increase, which at this point, the increase is coming, our grant's increasing. Obviously, we're going to see that 5% increase pretty much every year. We're not at 15%, and it'll probably not be in our lifetimes that we get there. So we can almost count on pretty much every year, if we're going to see an increase in our grant funding, that we will see that 5% increase in our local match.
Eric, anything further?
No, I have nothing further. I was just curious as far as the other municipality status. Thank you.
Got it. Thanks. So help me understand then, Todd. A couple of things. You said that our match was 297.
Yes.
But the document that I'm looking at says 316.
That was something I initially, and that was my fault. That had an amount for a capital local match request that shouldn't have been in there. I had sent a new one over to Janice.
Okay. So this is not the right. Janice, could you upload that when you get a minute?
Yeah, I sure will, because I was out when he sent that and I didn't get a chance.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm just looking at it. It also says payment date April 30th, 2023. And I'm like, whoa, we are late.
No, I apologize. The capital application, the capital local match request would be a separate resolution.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll have a review of the other document then and see if I have any questions. So just to be clear, so Derek, this is we budgeted this in totality in the 2024 budget.
Yes, we did. Yep. Actually, I think we budgeted a little bit over, Todd. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think the initial amount Todd sent over was actually a little bit more than this.
Yeah,
So,
I wasn't sure when we were looking at this, and the number I gave Tracy with the capital was higher than this. So yeah, you have extra money in your budget.
We'd rather that than the opposite, which is what I was trying to make sure of. Okay, good. And I know that there's what other entities currently contribute to the local match?
Our biggest contributors outside of the city are Loyal Sock, Montoursville, South Williamsport. We also have Old Lycoming, Jersey Shore, and on down the list, Hughesville, Muncie, Montgomery, Du Bois Town.
At this point, it's exclusively matched by other municipalities, correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
And the county is also included in there.
Got it. Okay. Well, certainly it's a necessary and use service in the area. So, okay. Bonnie, anything from you?
I just have one quick question. Todd, I know there was a significant amount of due from the mall. Was anything ever paid to catch up with that? I know it's a lost cause at this point, but was anything ever done with trying to, get some of the money from them?
There were attempts up through, I think, a year ago, and it was never reconciled. But like you said, at this point, I don't know what we can do.
Mm-hmm.
I was just curious because I know it wasn't really a significant amount at one point.
No, but I mean, they pretty much told us when they were getting ready to close that we didn't want the bus. They didn't want the bus going into the. I mean, we can go around the circle and we moved our stop to Ollie's, but they didn't even want us going in, to the property at that point.
Okay. I was just curious. Thank you, Todd.
Okay. All right. Thanks. Then I guess if that wraps it up for that item, then we will move on to item number 3. And item number 3 is a, hang on a second, I'm just going to go with what the wording is on the finance agenda. Oops. Just a moment. Item number 3 is a resolution concerning property between the city of Williamsport and RVTA. Mayor Slaughter, do you want to?
Sure, I can kick it off. Yeah, I can kick it off, and then we also have Chris Kenyon and Joe Nagy here as well. But yeah, as you said, this is a resolution before you for the transfer of real property from the city over to RVTA. This would be 100 West 3rd, 144 West 3rd, 127 West 4th, and 11 West Church. As we're all aware, RVTA, the authority was created, and then the transit assets next here to transfer over to the River Valley Transit Authority. So essentially, this resolution is recognizing that transfer of these assets. And yeah, I think that's all I have on my end. If Jill and Chris want to add anything in further, and of course, questions from council.
Jill, Chris, do you have anything additional to add? Todd, for that matter?
The only
Okay.
thing I want to add is I did get some guidance on the valuation for like the public works area. It's not going to be a traditional appraisal. What I'll have to do is get in contact with an engineer, because we're not appraising the property, it's the improvements. So that is shaking loose from FTA. So I gave Chris some wording that would just, instead of authorize the appraisal, it'll be authorize the valuation. And I'll just give me a couple days to work through who's qualified to do that component of it. And then I'll let you guys know. But they did say it's possible to do what you want to do. It's just not an appraisal, it's a valuation.
Okay, got it. Okay, so yeah, I guess just to that that comes across as a bit cryptic. So I guess let me preface it by saying that the city obviously created a transit authority to handle, and Chris and Jill, jump in if I'm saying something wildly inaccurate, please. The city created a transit authority last June to take over the city's, what had previously been a component element of the city, the transit operations within the valley. And as part of creating that transit component, there were buildings that were owned by the city, because the transit component was part of the city, that will need to be transferred to the transit component, because those buildings have been paid for by monies, by federal and state funds related to transit. So this item that we're looking at begins the process of that transfer on some of the buildings that have substantial federal and state investments in them, and that are clearly more or less 100% transit related, or not 100% transit related, but clearly, should be property of the transit authority within the city. And then there are some discussions remaining on a handful of other buildings that saw state and federal investment that are primarily oriented towards city purposes, and how we will be handling those. So these properties considered by this lease, or not by this lease, excuse me, by this transfer agreement, are the Trade and Transit 1 and 2 buildings downtown, as well as the Church Street parking deck, and a tiny little strip of sidewalk and street that runs alongside Kinley's Jewelers on Laurel Street, that was acquired by the Transit Authority to widen Laurel Street for better bus access up to 4th Street. So those are the items being contemplated in this agreement specifically. And I don't know, and I didn't see that I received any sort of update. I don't know what funds were invested in the strip of street acquired by the Transit Authority, if anybody does. But both the Trade and Transit 1 and 2 buildings and the Church Street parking deck have anywhere between $5 and $10 million in state and federal funds invested in them, making them obviously better suited as transit assets, both from their current uses and also from the financial side. Anyway, sorry, I think that this is while this is something that we've been sort of discussing in the background, between the city and RVT for quite a long time, I don't think this has been a public item of discussion all that often, aside from a handful of asides at city council meetings. So I wanted to put that out there first. Jill and Chris or Derek, did I miss anything in there descriptively?
No,
Okay.
I was just going to add that to kind of have some kind of protective clauses for the city, we were adding language that upon depreciation of the federal funds, that the properties could themselves revert back to the city if the city chose to take those back over at any point in time in the future.
Right. Yeah, which I think was something that that I know that I was interested in. I believe that the form that agreement takes in this document is that we could choose to take them back, but wouldn't necessarily choose to take them back. Correct, Chris?
Correct. Yeah, it is not an automatic reverter. It would be upon your review and consideration for that at that point in time.
Right. Yeah, I think from my perspective as a member of city council, the city owns quite a bit of property, no matter how you look at it in the city, and to a certain extent to saddle ourselves with obligations for upkeep on additional pieces of property seems fiscally foolish to me. So I was concerned that we have the option to perhaps take possession of the structures when the federal money had run out, but not the obligation. Eric, you have anything you'd like to say about this?
No, I think you've done a good job. Obviously, the biggest concern that we have is the Streets and Parks building. And then just, again, something else to just mention, so it's out there in the public sphere. At this current point in time, it does include Elm Park, the way that is parceled, but that is something that we are working on to get that decoupled from that particular parcel, so it is not affected and not ceded to the federal government.
Yeah, I mean, I think just to follow up on Eric's point to that, the plan is to actually, when that property has been evaluated and transferred, is that we'll actually do a subdivision and carve out that parcel to come back to the city. And Todd and Jill, if I've misstated that in any way, just please confirm.
Nope, that's correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess for the public's understanding, the divorce of the city's transit arm from the city itself is long and complicated, like most divorces, and so we're still ironing out some of the bits and pieces, but these are some of the major assets that we knew that could be transferred without a lot of amendment. And then it's not on the finance committee's agenda today, but will be on city council's agenda, the leases as well. Because the city is currently residing, several city offices are currently within Trade and Transit 1 and 2. The city will continue, as we have been, leasing property leasing the spaces from RVTA, but obviously the leases are transferring to the new owners. However, we did receive these documents somewhat late in the game this week, so the point of this discussion is to begin the discussion, and then hopefully, if we all have enough time to review them and get all of our questions answered before Thursday, we can move on Thursday. Otherwise, we can always table it for our next meeting if necessary. But thanks to Jill and Chris, I know that you guys worked hard on these since the last time that we talked about it. So thank you. Okay, Bonnie, did you have any observations on these so far?
I'm fine, Liz.
Okay. Got it. And if I can just ask, I think I was kind of waiting on receiving a copy of the leases, guys. And I have a document in my inbox that seems to have had them attached, and then the attachments were removed. So I don't currently have a copy of the current leases, and I know that we've all seen them, but I would appreciate it if someone could send those my way.
And I just sent a bunch of comments to Chris. He probably hasn't been stationary long enough to see them, just on clarifying where the city's occupied. So
Got Yeah, I know that we executed some leases last year, but I'm assuming that those will need to change to accommodate this, so it would be good to get to see those sooner rather than later. Okay, anybody else have any further comments here? Then if I'm hearing none, as I mentioned, item number 4 is being removed from the agenda and will be with us again in 2 weeks. Item number 5 is any related items. Does anyone have anything else that they'd like to introduce? Okay, hearing nothing, then I think that we are all okay to adjourn, guys. I will look forward. Actually, I will not be at Thursday's meeting, but I may be joining everyone remotely. But I'm sure that we'll be in touch between now and then. Thanks for coming today, and I'll see you soon.
Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Have a good one, everybody. Bye.
Bye.